eastern areas seeing a better chance of drier and clearer intervals, and where we get some clear spells, temperatures into the single figures, and for parts of northern Scotland, with some shelter, seeing temperatures dip to 2 to 5 Celsius. So a bit of a fresh start in some places first thing Wednesday, but for many, well, it's simply another day of sunny spells and showers. A better chance of sunny spells coming through in between the showers because there'll be fewer showers around, and again they'll be affecting western areas more than eastern areas. Temperatures up to 14 or 15 in the south, 11 or 12 in the north, and with less of a gusty wind, it perhaps might feel a bit more pleasant, even if those temperatures are a degree or so down on Tuesdays. Into the evening, though, the clouds will thicken from the northwest, and for parts of northern and western Scotland, there'll be persistent rain coming through at times. Some dampness over western hills elsewhere, but for many it's drying up and it's turning milder, and that's the theme for later this week. We're going to see mostly dry weather for the south and the east, with some sunshine coming through, but a lot of cloud elsewhere, and that cloud containing some damp weather for the hills of Wales, northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. And with a freshening breeze, we'll see some persistent wet weather for western Scotland at times, but that breeze is coming from the southwest, so that's another trend for later this week. It's turning much milder.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales
and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good evening. We're live from Arizona this evening, one of the key states in today's midterms. Perhaps if Carrie Lake wins here and becomes governor, she could even become Donald Trump's vice president running mate. That's my opinion, one of the reasons that GB News is here. But Rishi Sunak has struck a big deal with America. We're going to be buying billions of cubic meters of liquefied natural gas from the USA. My audience question tonight, is Rishi getting this right? All of that in just a moment after the news.
Thanks, Nigel. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. MPs have voted in favour of Labour's motion to maintain the state pension triple lock. The non-binding vote was passed by 218 to 0. It comes amid reports that the Prime Minister is looking to raise state pensions and benefits in line with inflation. Rishi Sunak and Chancellor Jeremy Hunt are also considering imposing up to £60 billion in tax rises and spending cuts in next week's autumn budget. Downing Street has described the latest bullying allegations against Sir Gavin Williamson as serious. It follows a report in The Guardian that Sir Gavin told a senior civil servant to slit your throat while he was Defence Secretary. It also claims that on another occasion he told them to jump out of the window. Scrutiny is mounting on the PM after it emerged he appointed the minister to his cabinet despite being aware of a previous allegation. Sir Gavin denies bullying. A coroner says he's seen no evidence that Archie Battersby was taking part in an online blackout challenge. The 12-year-old had his life support withdrawn in August after his parents failed to overturn a High Court ruling allowing doctors to lawfully do so. The senior coroner presiding over a pre-inquest review says his phone contained messages reflecting a very low mood. Donald Trump has cast his vote in Florida as Americans across the country head to the polls in the midterm elections.
We love you! We love you, man!
The former US president left the polling station accompanied by his wife Melania and the cheers of supporters. Currently, the Democrats control both the House of Representatives and the Senate. President Biden is warning that a Republican victory could weaken the country's democracy. Donald Trump told reporters, hopefully the right thing happens. Back here, the RMT union says strikes on London's Underground service will go ahead. It's after last-minute talks failed to resolve a dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Union officials say Transport for London has refused its offer to suspend strike action in exchange for a pause to job cuts. Well, meanwhile, more than 70,000 university lecturers and staff will walk out for 3 days later on this month. The University and College Union says staff at over 150 universities will stop work over pay conditions and pensions. The strikes will take place on November 24th, 25th and the 30th. They could impact 2.5 million students. Extinction Rebellion co-founder Roger Hallam has been remanded in custody for almost a month. He was arrested, along with 7 other people accused of planning to join the Just Stop Oil protests on the M25. They've been charged with conspiracy to cause a public nuisance. Activists have disrupted traffic on England's busiest motorway for the past 2 days. 16 protesters were arrested today and 22 charged for actions yesterday. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News, the People's Channel. Time now for Farage.
Good evening. Well, I'll be talking a lot today about the midterms that are taking place in the US here today, and I'll feature particularly on Arizona. But before I get to that, an announcement overnight that a deal has been done. We don't know the exact details of a scale, but a deal has been done between Rishi Sunak and the Biden administration. We are going to be buying billions of litres of liquid natural gas. Now, that's really rather important because our over-reliance on wind energy means that if this coming February the wind doesn't blow, and the national grid have already warned us, we could face blackouts between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. every day, and that could last for weeks. It is an extraordinary, some would say intolerable position for our country to be in, but that's where we are. So Rishi Sunak has done this deal, and I want to ask you, is Rishi getting this right? Give me your thoughts, Farage at gbnews.uk. I'm going to give him 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10 because, yes, at least he's done something that will ensure, if the volumes are big enough, that the lights don't go out. Although as yet, we don't know how much of it might get shipped to Germany. I suspect a deal there will be announced pretty soon too. But I can't give him 10 out of 10 because why have the Americans got natural gas? Any ideas? Any clues, folks? I'll tell you, it's because in states like Montana, they are busy fracking. They've made themselves, under Trump's time, energy independent. And Rishi Sunak, our new Prime Minister, has completely ruled out any onshore gas exploration at all. I find that quite extraordinary. I know the Russian-funded campaign against us becoming energy independent has had its impact, people fearing earthquakes and worse, fears that are completely and utterly unfounded. Sadly, our Conservative Prime Minister has gone along with it, but please give me your thoughts. Well, I'm joined now by Angela Knight, former CEO of Energy UK. And Angela, that's my take on it. What do you think about this deal? And as I say, we don't know the scale of it yet, but surely this deal with the Americans is good news.
It is. And I actually think you've been a bit harsh on Rishi Sunak because, after all, he's only been in the job, what, 10 days, something like that. And certainly the reports I've read talk about 10 billion cubic meters from the US. So that is a very significant chunk. How much do we use? Something like 70, 80 billion cubic meters a year. So what we're saying, he's got 10, 12% as a deal. Now, I think that's good. Let me pick up your point on fracking, though, if I may, Nigel. And the US has never had this sort of constant concern, somewhere between concern and outcry, protest or whatever, against fracking that we have here. To my mind, what the key is not so much fracking. There's a battle that, we can fight, but the battle I would much prefer to fight is getting those small-scale nuclear power stations in place, the ones which cost you about $2 billion, you can build in a couple of years, and you can put them on the existing sites of the current nuclear power stations. That gives us both low carbon and the essential backup that we need. So I take my efforts down that road, and I sincerely hope that he will do that next.
Angela, I take your point, but nuclear energy should not be there as backup. Nuclear energy surely is there as baseload, whereas with gas, you can turn the gas on, you can turn the gas off. And given our huge over-reliance on wind energy, we would possibly find ourselves with way too much energy at some points and too little at other times. But let me just pick you up on the point. You said I'm being too critical of Rishi Sunak. He has made it absolutely clear, that under his term, the last 2 years of this Conservative government, we will not be doing any onshore drilling and exploration for gas. And yes, you're right to say there's been a huge campaign against it. But let me put this to you. Isn't political leadership about picking up on issues that may have minority support at the moment you announce them, but you carry the public with you through leadership? After all, isn't that what Margaret Thatcher did?
Well, look, I totally agree with you. And by the way, you were right to pick me up when I said the word backup instead of baseload for nuclear. Just put it down to a bit of brain fade going on here. So my apologies for that. What I would have liked to have seen is a proper, scientifically controlled, good production size drilling onshore to see what we can get out and how safely we can get out from that shale gas that we've got trapped here in the UK onshore. That's what I would like to have seen. But I see I'm a bit more of a pragmatist because that would need to have started several years ago. And to start too many what will be unpopular things in the run-up to a general election Well, I've been a politician, you've been a politician, and you know you have to make choices. Nuclear power is not overwhelmingly popular, but by God, it's a much better deal than doing nothing, which is what we've done, and it's a much better early energy security proposition than spending a lot of money on doing another big power station at Sizewell. I'm not against Sizewell, but I know for sure that you can get the small scales up and running much quicker. You can get private investment there, and I would put more money in that direction than I would actually on more wind, because the more I build wind, the more I've got to put pylons up, the more I've got to bring cables down the east side of this country, and the more I'm going to upset all the residents down there. Whereas if I say, okay, I've got another form of low carbon electricity generation available, and it's called nuclear, I can put those on sites where I've already got the connections, then yes, there'll be some bolstering up that needs to be done. But we actually get to a better place for people, and that is the sort of leadership that I would like to see right now and up until the general election on making us energy much more secure in this country and a proper future and plan in place.
Angela Knight, thank you very much indeed for that. And I'm absolutely with Angela completely on wind energy. I really am. And I'm with her on nuclear too. I just think we need backup, and gas provides that. Now, it is midterm elections, the 8th of November. We are here in Arizona. There'll be lots of focus on Arizona, but I want to begin with Jim Rounds, president of political advisory firm Rounds Consulting. Jim, on the big picture, what I'm struck by is that for months now, the Democrats have focused on Roe v. Wade, on abortion rights going back to the states, individual states, and this concept that's got bigger and bigger, that democracy is at stake. If you go and vote Republican, you're voting for the death of democracy. On the other side, I see what the Republicans have done on a national level to talk about energy prices, to talk about inflation, the cost of living, but also they've majored, I think, pretty heavily on law and order, rising crime in the big cities. Who's got this right, who's got this wrong, in your view as a consultant?
I think it's a mix of both. I think at this time in the business cycle, and we're talking about global business cycle issues too, the same things that we're dealing with in the US, dealing with in the UK, I think we have to focus on how do we maintain job growth? How do we minimize the negative effects of a possible recession coming this next year? You have to talk about business issues. You have to talk about the same energy issues that you were talking about. But what I'm finding is that policymakers, when they're running for office, they often have to go back to their political book of dogma that they were given when they joined a particular party. It's, we're going to vote a certain way. But in reality, you have to be open to different ideas. You need balance. And so like with energy, you have to have balance. You have to have multiple uses. That allows you to not have disruptions in your economy. And there's even issues in the US where we want to shift more towards electric cars. Do you know what that would do to our grid if everybody had an electric car? It wouldn't work. And they're not going beyond that first calculation. So quite frankly, I think they have to rely on the economists a little bit more.
How big a role has Joe Biden played in this campaign? Is he really seen to be a genuine, effective leader of the Democrats?
No, I think he's done a bad job. I think the federal government continues to pump money into the economy, and not just spending, but we're also seeing the Federal Reserve Board put a bunch of money into the economy, and then they had interest rates very low. That's what exacerbated the inflation issues that we've had here. Supply chain constraints, all that other stuff is impacting everybody. But it was worse here because they wanted to be aggressive, but they didn't look at the consequences. And this isn't rocket science. We're talking about how do you deal with inflation? You can go back to a 30-year-old economic textbook and get ideas, but they're not doing that. And I think this year they're not doing that because they're playing politics because of the election, less than they're looking at how do I solve problems. However, coming into this next year, at least for Arizona, after we re-elect a new governor, and then we elect a new governor, and then we have additional leadership in the House and the Senate, we'll have new ideas that are going to come out, and that's when we start to educate policymakers so that they think more broadly and they think about the longer term. And I feel like the biggest problems that England faces, the biggest problems that the U.S. faces, is that lack of longer term vision and that just dogged, perception of we have to do what our political party wants us to do.
Yeah, look, I think, the truth is that the problems, the challenges, the opportunities are very similar, actually, on both sides of the pond. Now, the Biden administration, when they're asked about inflation, Biden says, well, he said Iraq the other day, but he says, look, it's all because of Putin, it's all because of Ukraine. Do American voters believe that?
I think American voters are very confused because, like you mentioned at the beginning, the campaigns have been a little bit different. It's been more about softer items rather than talking about facts, and that's actually pretty common here. I think less so in Great Britain. But in this case, when they talk about inflation is a result of somebody else's problem. Incumbents often say that when there's a problem. I think a lot of what we did here in the U.S. was self-induced. I think we have one of the most incompetent Federal Reserve Boards we've ever had. And I think we've had a very incompetent federal administration, including Biden, and the advisors, and I put advisors in quotes because I don't know if they're really experts in their particular area. So I sound a little down on it, but I'm optimistic for the future.
I learned 40 years ago that inflation was a disease of money caused by government, and I haven't changed that view in 40 years, and we're seeing it writ large. And the chances are now we've got inflation, but it's here to stay for a bit, isn't it?
I think it'll be here a couple more years, and I've been bringing back the same concept of the Volcker recession. Had a lot of government spending, had to hit the brakes, inflation was high. You cause a recession. That's really what's happening here. But I'm still very hopeful for it. There's some states that are a little bit more business friendly, like Arizona. I'm more hopeful for us than I am for the nation average as a whole.
Yeah. How do you see, the red wave is being talked about. That, okay, we get it, that the Republican Party will pick up seats in the House, will pick up a seat or two, maybe more, in the Senate. But kind of this happens at every midterm. Is this going to be an exceptional red wave, or is it in line with what we've seen over the last 20 years?
I've learned to not speculate as much over the last couple of cycles, election cycles, but it does seem, that pendulum does seem to swing back. But when it's a little bit closer to the middle and it forces people to think about things and they actually have to solve problems and they have to take out calculators to do math rather than just making stuff up, that's when good stuff happens. And so even if we swing a little bit to the right, if that brings us back into balance and then we start discussing the issues, a lot of it's going to fall on the integrity and the quality of the people that we elect, whether they're Republican or Democrat. The Republicans that are going to be coming in, like you're saying, they need to be open to how can we build the economy. That is what gives you extra money so you can reduce taxes. That gives you extra money so you can invest in education and other things. But you have to focus on economic issues, and we've gotten way away from that. I haven't seen a single economic issue in the vast majority of the political commercials across the country that are televised, and then also here in our state.
Final thoughts on Arizona itself, because that's where we are. Carrie Lake, for 22 years she was presenting local news here in Arizona, so a very well-known face in Arizona. She suddenly decides to get into politics. I met her before she even decided to run. Donald Trump endorses her. It's a very, very strong, very powerful narrative that she develops based around Christianity, the family, saying the election in 2020 was a disgrace, it was stolen. She's also, by the way, this morning saying that voting machines in Maricopa County, Arizona, are not working in some cases. She is an absolute fireball on the local political scene here, isn't she?
Yeah, her popularity has grown very rapidly, and she's a little bit more of an unknown for advisors like myself because it's somebody that is new, a different type of person coming in. But based on things that she's been saying, I feel like she would be just as open to any other gubernatorial candidate if I walked in and said, here's your 10 economic development items that you want to implement during your first 10 years. I picture her being willing to embrace those just like anybody else. And so I think things after the election, when you actually have to start governing, you have to figure out the budget, you have to figure out tax policy.
You're assuming she is going to win, are you?
Slight lead right now, but it's still considered a coin flip among those experts, and I even call the experts, I put that in quotes as well, because they're guessing just like we are.
But if she gets there, I think she could well be, and we hear that Donald Trump is making a big announcement at Mar-a-Lago, Tuesday the 15th of November. I would think if she wins, she could be his vice presidential running mate.
That's a rumor that I've heard as well, and I would hate to lose somebody that's going to come into the state and want to work on the economy and work on building things. I would hate to lose that caliber of a person, but we'll just have to see how that works out. That's speculative, but I'm still optimistic. Our state, even though it's a little warm right now, if you would have come in tomorrow, we would have been rained on. Our state, if I was going to pick any state to be doing the work I'm doing in, it'd be Arizona. We have the best opportunities. We have good tax rates. All the other things that you want to look for, the balance that we talked about, we have here, and it's an exciting time to be an Arizonan.
Jim Rounds, thank you very much indeed. Well, you heard it here first, folks. I think that's what Trump's going to do. I think he will declare next Tuesday that he's going to run for the 2024 presidency. And I tell you what, I reckon it's 50-50 whether Carrie Lake is his choice as VP. But of course, she has to win today. In a moment, we'll look at borders. Goodness me, we've got a huge problem with our borders in the English Channel, but you want to see the scale of what's going on in Texas and Arizona. It's huge.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel. Welcome back to sunny Arizona. So, is Rishi getting this right? The deal that he struck with the Biden administration, we're now told it could be as much as $10 billion cubic litres of liquefied natural gas, which would be 10 to 15% of what we need every year. So it is a big deal, a significant deal, and it will help to keep the lights on. What about your thoughts, your reactions to this? Stuart says to me, sounds like a case of swapping masters. Who's to say we won't fall out with them too? Then what? Well, over the years, we've had the odd row with America, but generally I think we're pretty good allies, and I think when the British and Americans shake hands on a deal, it probably will hold. One viewer says, gosh, this is a bit strong, Rishi is an idiot, hated by Conservative voters. He should cross the floor and join the woke Green Party with the other pro-immigration globalists and net zero fanatics. We should use our own gas under our own country. Well, I agree with that last point entirely. And I have to say, British politics is back where it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I looked at the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives, and I was leader of UKIP, and I said then you couldn't put a cigarette paper between them on most major policies. And after that, we saw the UKIP insurgency. We're at a very, very similar point. They're all centre-left social democrats. Paul says doing deals with the USA for imports of gas isn't really getting it right. Well, Paul, it's 50% getting it right. If it helps us stop the lights going out in February, that's a good thing. But I believe absolutely that we as a country have the ability, like America, to be self-sufficient in gas, and we jolly well should be. And finally, Stuart says, what is the carbon emission likely to be the tanker to take the gas across the Atlantic versus the gas we have under our feet? Yeah, Stuart, it is a perfectly fair and reasonable point that you make. Now, sometimes Westminster bubble stories become national stories of import. Gavin Williamson, sorry, I should say Sir Gavin Williamson, goodness only knows what he's been knighted for, is again in trouble over comments that he's made. This time it's alleged that he said something rude to a senior civil servant. He said to the civil servant, slit your throat and jump out of the window. Well, this is the kind of childish behaviour we expect from Sir Gavin. Just have a look at this little clip. Listen to this little clip of him giving President Putin some advice.
Frankly, Russia should go away, it should shut up. But if they do respond to the action that we've taken, we'll consider it carefully and we'll look at our options.
Now that was in 2018, but you can see the kind of person Sir Gavin is. These people in the real world would not make a success of their lives at all. Somehow, in modern-day Conservative parliamentary politics, they get cabinet ministers' jobs, they even finish up in the House of Lords, or, as in his case, getting knighted. It shows you the dearth of talent we have currently in British politics. Frankly, it is pretty shameful. Now, COP27 is still going on, and I wanted to remind you all of what Boris said about the use of coal at COP26, pretty much this time last year. Have a look.
But one by one, and with ever greater speed and efficiency, we can begin to close down those billions of hydrocarbon combustion chambers that you find currently in every corner of the planet. We can phase out the use of cars with hydrocarbon internal combustion engines. By 2035, we can do that. We in the UK are leading by ending new sales by 2030. We can end the use of coal-fired power stations. We can do it by 2040 in the developing world, 2030 in the richer nations. We can...
Well, this just goes to show what a complete waste of time and money all those private jets are that head off to COP26, or in this case, COP27 this year. There is Boris Johnson talking about the end of coal. Let me tell you that 2022 will be the record year ever for the usage of coal. In China and India between them, they will burn 4 billion tonnes of coal this year. We also learn that when it comes to CO2 emissions, China has emitted as much CO2 since 2013 as Great Britain and the United Kingdom did in the last 200 years, including the whole of the Industrial Revolution. And yet we apparently now are supposed to pay reparations to parts of the world that get climate emergencies, or what we used to call bad weather. I mean, you just couldn't make it up. Oh, and by the way, in China, they're considering scaling back their so-called net zero targets. Ask yourself a question: who are the mugs in all of this? And you have to say the United Kingdom comes pretty close to the top of the table. Now, I, for 2 years, have been talking about illegal immigration. Yes, I've been out into the English Channel again and again, filming the small boats, trying to shame the rest of British media into covering the story, trying to shame politicians into even admitting that we have a problem. Well, I'm pleased to say, since GB News came on air a year ago, we've absolutely led the way with this on story after story. So what is Rishi Sunak, our new Prime Minister, going to do? Well, he's had a meeting with President Macron on the edges, on the fringes of COP27. He says he's very optimistic we can start to deal with the problem. Guess what he's going to do? We're going to give the French another £80 million. Yes, that's right, another £80 million to try and stop the boats leaving from French beaches. We gave them tens of millions last year, tens of millions the year before, and yet every year that goes by, the numbers come across the channel seem to double. And even if we put British agents on those French beaches, remember what I've said to you before, they're launching on a 70-mile stretch of French coast. There are hundreds of square miles of sand dunes in which they can hide. You can stop them one day, but they're back the next day. The reason they're coming, actually, it isn't the fault of the French. Yes, it's me, Nigel Farage, saying that, but I promise you, it isn't the fault of the French. It's our fault, because we put them in 4-star hotels, give them 3 square meals a day, they get free medical care. Oh, they can get dentists. You try and get on an NHS dentist list, and we give them 38 quid a week spending money. They're coming because of the pull factors, and they're coming increasingly to work in the illegal, criminal drugs and prostitution trade within our country. They are the hard facts of life. And in a moment, I'm going to talk about immigration, illegal immigration in the USA. A few more comments from you, though, before I get to that. Chris says, Sunak, like the rest of decent Tory MPs, is unable to think for himself. He will always follow the virtue-signalling woke socialists in every decision he makes. And, you know, you're right. Conservative politicians are terrified of media criticism. It's why, love him or hate him, Donald Trump is so remarkable, because he just doesn't care. Edward says, I think Rishi is making the right noises, but it's not big enough. He shouldn't have ruled out fracking. No, he certainly shouldn't. And finally, another says, Sunak will not have a constituency behind him on fracking. Yorkshire will be one of the main exploration sites. You know, it's a funny thing. People can say, oh, we don't want gas to be drilled, you know, in the local hills. The funny thing is, once you start doing it, and thousands of people start getting very well-paid jobs, and that leads to pubs, restaurants, hotels, and everybody else flourishing. It's funny, you know, how people can, when it comes to financially doing better, change their minds. In a minute, after the break, I'm going to talk to a man who I went down and had a look at the southern border with a year ago. I was truly shocked and astonished at the scale of what I saw. We'll also learn that sheriffs in America have a lot more power than police officers in the UK. I'll be joined in just a moment by Sheriff Mark Lamb. See you in a couple of minutes.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales
and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's time for Talking Pints. Yeah, we're doing it al fresco today. But before I introduce my guest, here's a clip of me last year down in the desert in southern Arizona, witnessing the scale and, I think, the severe impact of those who are illegally crossing America's southern border.
Now what you're seeing is one or two guys that are seasoned, trustworthy guys will carry the loads of methamphetamines and fentanyl. And a lot of times they'll sip on this little concoction of meth, heroin, and it's a little water concoction. And when we contact them, they run. We chased a guy in the helicopter for 5 miles before we finally let him go, and he was running full-on sprint through this desert.
Well, Mark Lamb, Sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona, joins me on Talking Pints. Mark, absolute pleasure.
Pleasure's all
to have
mine.
you on the programme.
Thank you for being here.
No, well, I think, as you know, I believe that the relationship between our two countries is vital for both of us and for the free world, so it's an absolute pleasure always to be here. That day I was with you, God, it was even hotter then.
Right, it was much hotter then than it is now, although it feels great today.
It's beautiful. We've got rain in London, but I know you guys think it always rains.
Rain? What's that?
It's not. What I saw there with you weren't poor, desperate people coming from war-torn countries. That is a criminal enterprise on a vast scale. Just tell us, this drug fentanyl, just how bad is this?
Well, first of all, people need to understand that this is not about immigration. This is about human trafficking and drug trafficking into America. Women are being raped, children are being raped and used as pawns, men are being extorted. And then we talk about the fentanyl piece that they're bringing in here. It's as bad as, it's unprecedented what they're bringing in here. This is the most powerful drug we've come across thus far, and I think they're making even more powerful drugs. But it is crippling America. It is killing American lives. It's become the leading cause of death amongst Americans between the ages of 18 and 45, over 107,000 deaths last year. It is not just, you don't have to just consume it. It can kill you by just being in the mere vicinity of it. Last year in Arizona, we had 33 children die from fentanyl poisonings. 7 of them were under the age of 1.
Wow.
So yes, it's a problem, and it is not getting better. It's getting worse and worse every day.
And the sheer numbers now coming in across the Texan and Arizona borders, what are we looking at this year?
So in 2018, my county, just me, my sheriff's office, doesn't include any of the other agencies, we had 0 M30 fentanyl pill seizures in 2018. 2019, we had 677 pills. 2020, we had over 200,000 pills we seized. 2021, over 1.2 million pills. Wow. And this year we will far exceed 2 million pills. And that's just my sheriff's office. It doesn't include all of the other agencies.
And they're the ones you catch?
That's the ones we catch. We probably don't catch 10%.
No.
So you have to think, if we're catching 2 million, 20 million pills got through at least.
And in terms of numbers of people, we're looking at what, 1 million people this year are going to cross the border illegally? More than that?
2 million plus.
2 million.
I mean, just last month alone, we had 87,000 gotaways, people that we didn't even catch, that we saw on cameras, that we didn't, we know that they crossed, but we didn't catch them. You got to figure that number's probably double of the people that we didn't even see that didn't hit our cameras.
Now, Trump was elected in 2016, build the wall, that big, beautiful wall. Some of it got built. It didn't get completed. I hear that the Biden administration are beginning now again to build the wall. Is that right or not?
Well, they don't want to tell you that. They want to say they come up with some other song and dance, but they have started to build portions of the wall because they need to. And then the governor of the state of Arizona has actually put those Connex boxes along some of the gaps as well to try to help reduce it. Look, the wall is not the end-all be-all, but President Trump understood the value of the wall, and he was 100% right. It reduced the amount of people, and it sends a message to the world. You can't come in here illegally. But when you don't have a wall and when you don't have policies that say that, then it encourages people from all over the world to come, and that's what we're experiencing.
Is it going to have a big impact today, Election Day?
I do believe it'll have a big impact, and I think when they see the red wave in this country, I think the cartels are going to have a mad push to get people across the border because they know the politics are going to change in this country, and they need to change. We need to start protecting our border and putting America first, or else it's going to cripple us. It's going to bring us to our knees.
Mark, you've got a big budget every year. You've got 500 staff. I know Pinal County itself is absolutely vast in terms of, but bigger than England, I think. I mean, it's absolutely huge. But you're elected, of course, aren't you?
Right.
So, you go, our police officers are not elected, our senior police are not elected. You're elected, and that kind of allows you to, you can't change the law, but you can choose to interpret the law, can't you?
Right, I don't legislate, but what I am is I'm elected directly by the people. So I don't work for the president, I don't work for the governor, I don't work for other politicians. I work for the people of Pinal County, and there's power in that. And so if they pass a mandate or an order, I don't have to follow that. Those aren't laws. And honestly, I look at the Constitution first and foremost. Does it violate the Constitution? Of course, I follow the laws, but I do have the flexibility of determining what is right.
Well, you certainly do, and you seem to love your job.
That's right. I do love it. I love it. And I think the rule of law is what has built America. The rule of law is one of the strengths of America, that and the family unity. And the rule of law is being undermined by this administration every day, and it starts at the border. Their inability to control the border is the best way to reinvent America, which is what Joe Biden said. It's the best way to reinvent America, by undermining the border, by filling our communities with unknown quantities, unknown people, and by drugging the American people, which, by the way, is retribution from China in some aspect of the opium wars of 200 years ago.
We were involved directly in that one.
But you know what? They deem us the same. They see the West. America, Britain, they see us as the West. And if they can cripple us, they will.
Well, whether that's true or not, the fact is we've got a similar problem to you, and it's rising to the top of our agenda. We can't stop small boats crossing the English Channel. It's visible, it's there for all to see, and it is doing us great damage. I noticed really interestingly that when it came to the COVID-19 mandates, the stay-at-home mandates, the vaccine mandates for people to be in office, in jobs, Pinal County chose a rather different path.
We did. I chose the path of the Constitution. I chose freedom of the people, that we're adults, that we should be able to make our own decisions. And so we said, no, we're not doing the stay-at-home orders. We did it for about 4 weeks. And then when they tried to extend it, move the goalpost again, we said, no, we're not going to do it. And so we pushed back on it. And then the mask mandates, absolutely, we stood against it. Vaccine mandates, we stood against that. Because they're mandates in order, they're not laws. And you had people very angry with me, the media angry. But in the end, I was given the people the right to choose. It's not the government's place to tell people how to live their lives.
No, I agree with that. But ultimately, you know, Mark Lamb, you have to obey the law ultimately.
That's right.
So your argument is these were not actual laws that were being
They're
put
not
in place.
laws, they're mandates and orders. They were not legislated. Look, the founding fathers set this country up with 3 branches of government, the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. But what you have now is you have the executive branch creating mandates and orders, so basically they're legislating. You have judges who are interjecting their bias and creating case law, so they're legislating from the bench. We're all jacked up and we're trying to get it back, and you know, I'm doing what I can to preserve what this country was built on, which is the branches of government, the Constitution, the rights of the people, the power of the people. And so we felt passionately about that, and that's what we stood for.
Remarkable. Now, in the wake of the George Floyd murder, and that was what the court decided it was, we saw, and it happened in my country too, you know, rioting on the streets, police officers taking the knee, Black Lives Matter, you know, lionized as this wonderful organization. And I told the British people the truth about who they were and their intent, bringing down the entirety of our civilization, our religion, our family, everything. I'm very struck that an organization like that says it's all about racial equality and justice, my view is it's actually in danger of dividing us even more. How did you deal with that? Did you have those problems as a sheriff in Arizona?
I'm gonna be honest with you. Fortunately, in Phoenix PD, Phoenix Police Department, did a really good job of squelching all that. And what you saw is that they left Arizona. We had small pockets of it, but for the most part, it didn't trickle out into communities like mine. But I have a very good relationship with all the minority communities in our county. And I brought them together immediately to talk about and discuss openly some of the issues. And we were able to address it in a very gentlemanly manner. Good. And we were able to avoid a lot of the issues that arose. Now, I will say I've never once seen BLM do anything positive in our community either, nor have I seen or heard of them doing anything positive in other communities. And I would be 100% for that. If BLM's mission was to make lives better for those of, for African Americans or for whoever else, 100% behind it. But I didn't see that. I saw that the majority of what they're doing, what their organization was creating havoc and chaos for law enforcement across this country.
And to defund the police.
Absolutely.
Which, of course, in Oregon and places like that, they've defunded the police, and we've seen crime spiral, I mean, completely out of control.
And it's tragic because they got enough money to really make a difference and do some good work. But the fact that Chicago has had the problems and they've been nowhere to be found, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, these are places where they could have made a difference where things were going on, but they didn't. And I wish they would have done it different, because I think they could have done a lot of good work had they stuck to what they're by the nature. I think people gave them money expecting them to do those things.
And in a way, you grew up, didn't you, as a minority?
I did. I grew up in Hawaii. I was a minority there. Then the Philippines, I was a minority there. Panama, I was a minority there. Argentina, I was a minority there. And it gave me an appreciation for what it is to live in somebody else's country. But it also gave me an appreciation for America and freedom, the Constitution, what our founding fathers gave us.
You believe in this stuff very strongly, very passionately. Now, you've written a book, American Sheriff, Traditional Values in a Modern World.
Yes, I did. And
so how do the two fuse together?
So this is a book about, I think, some of the values that we've lost touch with in this world. And I tell stories of a lot of pithy proverbs and a lot of old sayings that my dad used to say. And then I build those chapters off of that. But they're things like, you got to be tough. Life is not always easy. It's going to kick you in the face. Overcoming adversity, family, all of these things. And I recently wrote a new book called American Sheriff, Rules to Live By, and I think you'll appreciate it's based on the poem by Rudyard Kipling, which is a poem I love. I think Rudyard Kipling is an amazing poet, and I love the poem If. And I tell stories of the founding fathers. I tell stories of courage, determination, sacrifice, some of their stories, some of my stories. Hopefully people will enjoy it. You can get them on Amazon, but you can get them at AmericanSheriff.store. AmericanSheriff.store.
Right, there you go, guys. AmericanSheriff.store. And they're going to do that. Of course, this is our symbol at this time of the year. You know, 1,250,000 British soldiers killed in 2 world wars defending liberty, and many, many, many Americans, of course, buried across in Northern Europe and in the Far East and all around the rest of the world. And you do begin to realise when you think about this stuff that our liberties and freedoms have come at a tremendous price.
Right.
And yet defending them is something that we just can't take for granted. We can't take casually, can we? I think, you know, if you don't defend freedom, I think the bad guys start to get their way again. So, you're a Republican. What do you make of Carrie Lake?
I love Carrie Lake. You know, I love her. I think she is an amazing woman. I think she's one of the best candidates in this country. One of the best candidates I've seen. She has moxie. I love that. Right now in this world, we don't need any more soft people that are going to just bend with whatever comes, the wind that blows. She is strong. She stands up for Arizona. She stands up for America. She doesn't get pushed around by the media. She's not afraid to be attacked by the media. 100% of the articles and news pieces they've done on Carrie Lake have been negative. That just goes to show you she's a tough woman. She's going to be an amazing governor for the state of Arizona. And not only that, she was willing to help bring along some of these other Republican candidates we had that are good people as well. And she took the time to rally them together to make Arizona a better state.
Because there was a split here, wasn't there? Because John McCain was a very senior Republican figure for many, many years in this state, and kind of the McCain wing of the party, the Trump wing of the party, didn't see eye to eye at all. It strikes me that it is now very much Donald Trump's Republican Party here in Arizona.
I mean, we still have a lot of people who support McCain, and they've been a big part of Arizona for a long time. But I would definitely agree with you. I think President Trump, I think more people are ascribing to his politics because we're kind of that old West spirit. We're a little bit renegade out here in Arizona. And we believe in America and what it was built on, and America first, and putting Arizona first, and being tough. You have to be tough if you're going to live in this desert. And we believe in that. And Donald Trump espoused that, and I think that's why a lot of Arizonans gravitate to Donald Trump, and that's certainly why they gravitate to Carrie Lake as well.
But it's tight, isn't it? It's tight. I mean, it really is, you know.
I don't believe the polls. I mean, I don't think the polls are, I think it's tighter than it should be. I think that Carrie Lake's opponent is probably one of the worst opponents I've ever seen. I don't think she's a good politician. I don't think she's been good for Arizona or will be good for Arizona. And I think this should be a 20-point difference. I do think Carrie Lake's going to have a pretty solid win. And I don't think the polls are I think they're misleading to the American people. I expect to see some good results tonight.
Well, folks, I've been joined here by Mark Lamb. I'm going to call him a sheriff with attitude, and thank you for joining me on Talking Points.
God bless you.
Okay. We've got time for Barrage the Farage. You've sent your questions in. I do not get to see them before. I've kept the sheriff here in case I get in real trouble. Ryan asks, whilst dangerous foreign criminals are invading this country, Rishi Sunak jets off to Egypt to virtue signal amongst the globalist elite. Do you agree this shows Sunak is not at all interested in stopping illegal immigration? No, he's giving the French another 80 million. It's not going to work. The only country that sorted this, I want to get Mark's reaction on this quickly, Australia. Tony Abbott, the Prime Minister, in 2012 said anyone that comes here by boat from Indonesia will never get refugee status, and he towed them back. It worked, didn't it?
Right. Yeah, and it helps. They're far away and they're on an island. It helps, but he did the right thing, and he pushed them back, and that's helped Australia.
So what should America do?
We should absolutely close our borders and get control of this, because the opioid crisis has become the leading cause of death, the fentanyl. So
100,000 deaths a year. I get what you're saying. Mark says, what political party do you support and why? Reform UK. It was my legacy to British politics. Steve says, as we remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice this weekend, do you think they would look at the state of our country now and say it was worth it? Oh, Steve, that's a very, very hard question. Do you know what? Whatever problems we've got in the United Kingdom, we managed to get Brexit done because the will of the people showed its way through. We are independent, we are democratic, we are sovereign, we are free to choose our own friends in the world. We may be very badly governed by a bunch of college kids who've never left university, but that's our mess. And look, it's not as bad. It's not as bad, actually, as you think sometimes. Sometimes things look worse than they are. Stephen says, how long do you think Rishi Sunak will last? Well, longer than 45 days, which is how long Liz Truss lasted. I got a letter the other day from somebody. He said, my son has lived through 2 monarchs, 3 home secretaries, 3 prime ministers, 4 chancellors of the Exchequer, and he's 4 months old. Which goes to show the absolute...
I was like, at first I was thinking, how old is this guy? Because Queen Elizabeth wasn't young.
We've been through a heck of a very, very bouncy and very, very difficult time. Tony asks, if the Conservatives don't get it sorted, which party will? Tony, I've made the point again and again. I've made the point again and again and again that we're where we were 10 years ago. The insurgency that I led, that led to Brexit, actually benefited the Conservatives. Boris got an 80-seat majority by briefly getting on board with policies that were popular. Now they've blown it. We need a completely fresh approach. We need a new party in British politics. I'm absolutely certain of that. Anyway, I'm done for now. We are waiting eagerly the results as they come through tonight. I'll be broadcasting live from here in Arizona tomorrow. But first, let's have a look at the all-important weather. I'll have a bet it's not quite as good as it is here.
Hello, it's Aidan McKibben here with the latest forecast from the Met Office. Showers will continue to rattle on the windows overnight, especially around southern and western coasts. It will stay breezy, but there will be some cloud breaks coming through. The weather highly changeable at the moment, low pressure in charge. That low pressure sitting to the northwest of Scotland, and various occluded fronts moving through on this strong westerly breeze. They're providing a focus for, well, more organised showers, longer spells of rain at times. But through the evening, well, the showers increasingly affecting southern and western coasts, with eastern areas seeing a better chance of drier and clearer intervals. And where we get some clear spells, temperatures into the single figures, and for parts of northern Scotland, with some shelter, seeing temperatures dip to 2 to 5 Celsius. So a bit of a fresh start in some places first thing Wednesday, but for many, well, it's simply another day of sunny spells and showers. A better chance of sunny spells coming through in between the showers because there'll be fewer showers around, and again they'll be affecting western areas more than eastern areas. Temperatures up to 14 or 15 in the south, 11 or 12 in the north, and with less of a gusty wind, it perhaps might feel a bit more pleasant, even if those temperatures are a degree or so down on Tuesdays. Into the evening, though, the clouds will thicken from the northwest, and for parts of northern and western Scotland, there'll be persistent rain coming through at times. Some dampness over western hills elsewhere, but for many it's drying up and it's turning milder, and that's the theme for later this week. We're going to see mostly dry weather for the south and the east, with some sunshine coming through, but a lot of cloud elsewhere, and that cloud containing some damp weather for the hills of Wales, northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. And with a freshening breeze, we'll see some persistent wet weather for western Scotland at times, but that breeze is coming from the southwest, so that's another trend for later this week. It's turning much milder.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio.
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into